This is the first stage that I actually have on video. The second stage of the match is stage number 2. So I'll let you guys watch this full speed because I think it's good to kind of watch it and take your own notes and see what you think could be better before I go and chip in with my own 2 cents. Let's take it back to the beginning. So, off the bat, you can see I'm cheating this foot position a little bit. It says feet, so I got one toe, one heel to get myself set back a little more so I can make this launch happen a bit easier. Grabbing this magazine, I think I grabbed low on the mag, it looks like to me, so that insert I missed. I had to go for kind of a second attempt on it. But my priority with this a situation like this is really in getting my grip perfect. You can see I am literally at the 25-yard line attempting to shoot a popper in this first position. So I want the sight picture has to be perfect, but moreover, right, the grip, like for my priority list is kind of you check the grip first. To make sure that part is always going to be right, because if it's not, then you have marksmanship mistakes that you're just not picking up on until you make a win call, so to speak. So I want to make sure this grip is perfect. You see obviously the confidence and the aiming and the shot and the hit and all that part went well after I actually got the gun loaded. Rounding this corner, built a lot of speed off this corner. I want to be basically stopped by right here. You can see I'm looking down at this target as I kind of clear this wall. I wanted to stop basically here and do this maneuver that I do. So that I'd be shooting these more in the beginning of this window than the end of it. So you can see this targets are kind of closing off to me because of this wall right here. But this actual, technique, so to speak, is what I wanted. Basically, if you watch it, I'm going to stutter a bunch so that I'm moving slow, setting my feet down gentle, and then I just kind of like roll my weight as I go when I'm not making really meaningful progress with my feet. So in this way, I'm shooting at the move measured more by what my weight is doing than what my feet are doing. Like I'm not trying to step deep and hard. I just kind of come in, put my feet down gentle, and stand up to keep my weight rolling as I engage these 2 targets. And then boogie. Continuing on, run hard. Coming into this position between these two, first 2.5 or whatever positions, I only had 2 extra shots because it's, I think a 14-round position. I got 16 in the gun. So aim pretty hard at that plate before I shoot a shot on it. Pound across these low-risk targets. And then you can see, if I zoom in on this, you can see I kind of over-transition onto this last partial. Like the gun comes over, and then there's a little bit of like you watch my hip twitch, you can see kind of the whole gun like snaps over really fast, and there's a moment of confirmation. And when I do this, I shoot a shot, and from my perspective, it was just a weird grip flinch where my support hand kind of twitched the gun, and I actually shanked a shot like right onto the corner of this no-shoe right there with the second shot, which is not something that happens to me very often, but I saw it immediately, saw Shen's another shot, so that target was 2 alpha no-shoot before I rolled on. Getting out of here, throwing a reload, got to land exactly on this corner right here, so I'm looking at that spot as I approach. You can see that if we wind that back just a little bit, you see I look to the corner, and then I look, once I'm sure my feet's going to land there, I'm looking up to the target. A lot of confirmation now, right? Because I'm thinking about it in my head, like I've trained myself to, once I make a mistake, like you double down and get points because your hit factor just automatically got 10 points. You just lost 10 raw points off the bat, knowing that you have a penalty. So I'm going to shoot extra careful on this section to make sure I lock down the good points. So it's pretty careful shooting from here on out. In this last section, there's a lot of really awkward slices. Basically, in this left-hand lean, you could get at this plate, and then this partial that's behind the RO right here is being occluded by another no-shoot that's right there. So I had to basically take a small step over to get at that, and then take 2 kind of hitch steps, so to speak, to get at these last 2 targets in this window and in this right-hand partial. So you can see it take a kind of a step drag there, and then another adjustment for another step drag here to lock down the points. So black mark is definitely the strike on this partial that's just caused by a true marksmanship error. That's not something that happens to me very often, so I'm not going to let myself get really mad about it. There's not any, in my mind, there's no major adjustment that needs to get made. It's something that I know is not something I do very often. It's something I know how to avoid. So I'm trying to shake this off and move on to the next stage, which we'll get into right now. So we've missed about 1.5 seconds or something like that at this stage. You can see these start marks, these divots in the ground right here where I started, and I've run to here and engaged this one tuxedo, and that's kind of where the video picks up. Doing the math on this stage ahead of time, just like the last one, I knew that it could optimistically be about a 6.5 factor. So I know, like my shorthand math on that, I know that basically every Charlie that I shoot is going to cost me about 0.35 seconds. And you can just take my word for that. That's how it works. If it's 6 factor, every Charlie is about 0.35 3-5 seconds shooting minor. So some of these really far targets in the back, like there's another one of these open targets just like this, a little bit off screen, that's even farther than these two. It's probably about 20 to 25 yards away. So I know that I'm probably, like, I'm accepting ahead of time that I'm going to aim fairly loose on those tighter targets with low risk. Like, it's not likely I'm going to miss them altogether, but I'm going to have to really sit there and fight for alphas to get all alphas on targets that are low risk like that. So this stage is a bit low factor for the strategy, but basically I'm choosing to, like, intentionally alpha Charlie those targets. Like, I'm going to aim pretty loose on them and just and try to let the time really stay low while then being very diligent on the risk targets. So you see pretty disciplined shooting on this stack that I transitioned to right here, because there's a chance that you can actually miss that or push it into the no-shoot. So I want that to be very careful. And you see the rest of the far targets I'm shooting at a pretty good clip. Run hard, close target here. Again, pretty fast split for a 25-yard target right there, but I'm not going to sit there and fight for 2 alpha on a target that there's no risk of me missing. And to sit there and fight for the A's, I'm going to have to invest probably 0.8, where I know I can drop a 30 split on it and get at least an alpha Charlie. Reload to here. In this section right here, you can't see it very well, but behind this big Sig Sauer banner, there's a wall in the way with 2 partials that basically you're losing like up to the middle of the A zone. So pretty disciplined shooting, diligent shooting on these 2 targets. And then get after on the easy stuff. And that's pretty much that. So most of this stage comes down to just knowing where you have to absolutely avoid risk on a target like this, on a setup like this, right? Like, you have to shoot perfect shots because there's a chance you can run them high or low if you start to get reckless. On the rest of it, you have to really ask yourself, is it even worth sitting here and fighting for the points, knowing that I'm just getting back in production, knowing that shooting iron sights, I know how long it takes me to shoot perfectly aimed shots, and realistically, even doing that, there's still a chance that I might not get the hits that I want. And that was kind of my mindset going into this one, just to run fast and stay relaxed, like, be committed to the actual aiming schemes you talked about ahead of time. So in this stage right here, I'll back this up to actually play the whole video. You can see at the end there's a balance beam. And this is a very high factor stage to continue to talk about the math we discussed last time, right, on the last stage. So I know that I want to shoot really aggressively, but I'm also looking at it like, where are the places on this stage where I can justify giving away raw points? What I mean by that is, like, all the targets are really easy, so why would I shoot crappy points basically on purpose unless I'm going to gain something by doing it? So I'm shooting very carefully here, trying to just look fast to the spots ahead of time to make it so that I have a lot of time to process that point that I want to hit, and then generally confirming on the sights very little, like seeing very little detail, but trying to, like, see that spot on the target really intently, if that makes sense. Reload here. And this right here was the only target that I said I was going to be okay with not fighting for points on. So pretty aggressive shooting on these first 2. Pop, 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 pop. And this head box target over here, I have about an index card worth of alpha in the body, and then that credit card shaped alpha in the head. So, like, I'm not going to sit there and fight for alphas on a target like that. Like, there's a chance I can still push him down and get him into the no-shoot. So I'm pretty much just going to aim at the AC line in the body, and I know there's a good chance it'll get double Charlie on it. So you see the pacing is pretty much the same on this target as these 2 wide open ones. And so onto this balance beam here. The last 2 times I walked this, it took two walkthroughs, like, during the actual, while they were pacing for the shooter ahead of me. And the last 2 walkthroughs before I went, I stumbled off this balance beam. So I was thinking about this, like, okay, dude, like, don't come into this too hot. Literally, like, walk down the beam in slow motion if you have to. Just, like, stay low and maintain your balance and let the rest of it come together. What's going to really determine the time here and how fast you do this is how fast you can get at these 2 clusters of steel back here. If you hit those for one, like, the raw time is going to be fine. So you're going to see this is pretty unremarkable shooting from here on out, and I'm just trying to move, in my mind, I'm trying to move in slow motion to maintain my balance. That's pretty much exactly what I got. So in this stage here, we have this, you can kind of see, I have basically a handle where I rip down on this handle, and it's going to pull the tip of this barrel up so that I can see targets through the barrel. So a lot of people try to do this by, like, kind of pinching the handle in their fingers so that they can then cobble together like a 2-handed grip when they're shooting through the barrel. In my mind, I thought that seemed less reliable and less predictable than just shooting it with one hand. So I intentionally shoot these targets with one hand, and knowing that the gun is probably going to move around more than I would like it to, but at least I know what to expect because I've shot with one hand a lot before. So extra shot on a tuxedo there, plate, and an open target. Run hard to the end, and then we have a lot of squirting all kind of in one position here. So pick this deep position, pick the middle position, as I sort of bring my weight up onto this leg so that I can hit this swinger activator. And so the thing I disliked about this stage most is the fact that my grip after this reload really was not what I wanted it. And you can tell, you can't really see the gun that good like until you get to the end here, but if you watch the behavior of the gun, you can see just the way that the gun is kind of moving around. You can see it's pitching and listing a lot. Like you see that it looks like if you watch the dust cover itself, it looks like the entire gun is flipping quite a bit. That's not really good enough, frankly. Even though they're easy targets, like it's never acceptable to have a bad grip and roll with it in my mind. So the pacing across this bank of 3 very open targets, you can hear is kind of weird and uneven. Like I'm confirming a lot more on each transition entry because the gun's just not behaving the way that I'm expecting because the grip is not there. So even though this on paper ended up being a fine performance, I was pretty dissatisfied with this, to be honest. So this stage was a little bit wacky and it was kind of deceptively difficult. There's some farther shots mixed in, but mostly it's just a crazy amount of like weird directional changes and then like wide transitions. So I chose to go with a plan where I knocked out two of these targets that were kind of tucked in this corner here. And that enabled me from that point just like work the whole stage in a V. And I realized pretty quickly that wasn't necessarily the fastest plan, but it was the first one I arrived on and I knew I could remember it, so I stuck with it. See right there, that's what I'm talking about, like that little hesitation after this position that came in and basically indexed on this partial and then realized, hey, that's not the plan, and sweep these 4 targets in this direction. On a stage like this, again, it's pretty high hit factor. The leading score was around 9. I knew I probably wasn't going to be able to match that because it was someone in a faster division than me, but I'm comfortable taking more risks and shooting some stuff moving on this. Like you can see, leaving this previous position, I'm taking out like a 15-yard target on a pretty good clip so that I can hit this reload into the front. Leaving a position like this, again, super awkward movements. I'm looking like this. There's a partial and a tuxedo through this next opening after this. I'm looking at this actual buckle on the ground to make sure if my foot lands. If my left foot lands there, I know I'll nail the position and I'll be able to see both targets. So when I leave this position, I look right there exactly to throw a glance at that position to make sure I hit the spot, and then reload again to finish. And just like on the last stage, this final reload, my grip was a little bit wacky. So I had this target in the back that I shot, the second to last target I shot. I had a pair that was like just like that, like a barbecue fork in the target, but it was kind of wide like that out on the Charlie zone. I think because my grip was jacked up, or I don't really know, because everything I didn't look great. Like I saw like the gun was kind of like listed a little bit to the right when I fired both, but I saw green. It was a low risk target, so I just sent it. So this stage ended up having a few too many just like random Charlies for no reason, but otherwise it was an acceptable run. Not a great run, but an acceptable run. Here is another super high factor stage. Basically the only hard shots in the stage you can see on screen right now. So we have these steel, which those are not hard shots, but it's a conditional go. You got to get the hit to continue. And then this tuxedo and then this half target after this movement are really the only tight shots in the whole stage, and the rest of it is flat out. So you're going to see me take some risks here, shooting some stuff really aggressively on the move, including some steel, to try to keep the raw time down, knowing that I'm not really going to be punished very much for dropping raw points, to be honest.
Are you good? Stand by.
So definitely a fast performance. You see a couple things were a little wackier than I expected. I knew this position right here, like I wanted to get to right here at least to be able to see the entire A zone in this target. So overran this just by a touch, and that makes it so I kind of overrun this position as well. Again, I can see this target now by right about here, and you can see the gun's not in the game, and that this wall is going to close that up. So, and from that point, I intended to take another deep step forward to get at these low guys, and instead I get just kind of the top of the target. So you can see I kind of tiptoe it to get at this first one to save just, that fraction of a second. Luckily, that worked out. If I had been at like another 6 inches out of position, that would not have worked. So it was just kind of an on-the-fly thing. That was not a part of the plan, but worked out. But, in a different situation, I could have gotten bit by that pretty easily. This part is good. I can see basically this popper I can see by right here. So you can see I throw a flying shot at this thing on the way, knowing it's a huge target, and I have several extra shots. And so I just kind of burn that sucker down, really like just green on white confirmation, knowing that I have almost a 0 chance to miss it, even at a run, with it being that close and that easy. And then into here, very good reload there, which saved me a little bit of time. But my plan was to come up and shoot this last array left to right, which would have been paper, paper, steel, then the activator. Just when I looked up, the very first thing I saw was the steel, so I threw the gun at it and shot it. So again, that's one of those things I'm not getting punished for here, but on a more technically demanding stage, you definitely can. So you want to be very critical of that. That's not the plan, so it's not correct. I think I had like 2 or 3 Charlie on this, which is cleaner than I even need to be, and a very aggressive time. So this was definitely a good run. This stage basically is all about the quality control and the risk prevention methods in my mind. You can see just looking at it from here, it's a bunch of different boxes. I don't really care for these types of stages. I think it makes it very hard for the ROs to tell where your feet are, especially when the dust starts to kick up. I think it eliminates a lot of the options that people have for how to actually take the stage, in the way that they want to. But it's a stage of the match, and you got to take it just as seriously as all the rest of them because your score still counts on it. So, talk about the actual execution here. Running all the way left first. This box activates this swinger. So I'm going to wait until I have a full exposure on that to engage it. And then there's another popper, just like this one. There's another popper on the left side of this, which I have a couple extra shots at. And that's pretty much the biggest hitch on this whole stage. So that was kind of a wake-up call from there. From here, small shooting on the move steps to free myself up for this next popper on these very low-risk targets. That was part of the plan. Reload to here. You had to get this target that's in front with the left side hardcover. Was in a nasty lean in this. So you can see my footwork here. My left foot's going to come in first so I can plant around and maintain this really deep lean. Go no reload to here. 3 targets here. And then finish up on a simple swinger array. So you can see, just kind of walking it back and looking at the entries on all these boxes, you'll see that I'm pretty careful about making sure that my feet are like super obviously in the right position before I begin shooting, even when the targets are easy to get at. Like I want to make it really obvious I'm trying to do the right thing. So I'm pre-aimed on these in a manner that could get me shooting probably a half second earlier. But again, if the RO says you have a footfall, you have no way to walk that back. So playing it pretty safe on the actual entry speed. Yeah. Good enough performance. The pickups on the steel definitely hurt my score for at least a whole second, but after that it was clean and linear. This was the last stage of the match. This is a really cool little short course, I felt. My initial plan was basically to draw and turn to the right so that I could shoot these 2 targets right-left. I thought that would make the draw a bit easier. And I kind of realized, like, at my second to last walkthrough, like, if I just was intentional about stepping off with the correct leg there, then I could just walk backwards and make the draw time pretty much the same. And the risk of not having my feet oriented the way I want to went essentially to 0. So I just did a straight up reverse on this. This part's good, I would say. The only thing that's not good about this is you can see my foot is kind of on this edge, which was not the plan. I wanted to land with my foot either on the bar, the traction bar that's below like this, or all the way on the platform, which would have prevented this slip on departure, which that could obviously be very bad. You can see the body language there is pretty obvious. I ended up with, I think, Alpha Charlie on this left-hand target where I dragged the shots on Alpha Charlie, and then the opposite on the other one. It was like Alpha Charlie, Charlie, even with the extra shot. So that really bugged me. Not necessarily the way I wanted to finish, but the diligence in the steel and the speed of the actual entries still made this a pretty okay score.